The first hour of practice for the Budweiser Shootout saw the run to turn one become Crash Alley. What will happen in round two, coming up now on Speed. You're watching Speed Week's coverage presented by Hershey's Milk and Milkshakes. 1 hour of practice, 6 wrecked race cars, a lot of slip sliding away as drivers get used to their new pieces for 2010. And then the big one, a simple change of mind was to be a change of lane. And it ended up with feelings and 6 cars badly hurt and drivers searching for answers and teams searching for their backup cars. Hi everybody, welcome back to Daytona for round 2 of Budweiser Shootout practice. Mike Joy, Larry McReynolds, Darrell Waltrip with you. Well, other than these cars will spin and crash, what do we learn in round 1?
Well, you know, I thought about it, and Larry and I were talking about the rule changes that they made on these cars. And one of the things that will make these cars evil to drive and make them loose like what we're seeing is the rear shocks. Yeah. When you add rebound to the rear shocks, it doesn't let the back of the car work up and down as much as it did in the past. Holding that rear end down makes it want to spin out, and so there might be some adjustments being made on rear shocks.
You agree, Larry?
Yeah, I do. You know, it's something they did test down here, and they actually added a little compression to the shock too, but the biggest thing was the rebound that holds it down. But what I know is in this 30 minutes since that last practice, there's a lot of work going on in that garage area. Yeah, you've got teams getting their backup cars ready, you've got teams making repairs, but because these cars were driving so bad in that first practice, trust me, the cars that were not involved in that wreck, there was a lot of work going on getting them ready for this practice.
But the ingredients for to have the kind of problem we had out there just now is we got a bigger restrictor plate, so we're going to go faster. We got a new tire, which has, you know, not been raced on. And then add that rear rebound to the shocks, holds the back of the car down. That's going to make it go faster too. I think it's going to take a little getting used to by these crew chiefs and drivers to adjust the cars to all these changes.
Well, hopefully things will settle down in this second hour of practice for the Budweiser Shootout. The field, up to 28 cars. That's how many are eligible based on this criteria. First, the 12 chase drivers from last year. Then the 4 Sprint Cup champions not yet in the race. Then the pass.
Trouble's front straightaway.
Kurt Busch in the 2 car.
He just got hooked.
And that will be a backup car. They'll be going to.
He made a lane change right here. I just turned around from our opening here, and I saw him kind of turn in front of someone. I couldn't tell you who it was. Take a look at it and see.
In front of him is John Andretti. Behind him is Montoya. Watch the blue deuce.
And Andretti looks like that maybe the 42 got into the back of the 2. I think that the 2 ran up on Andretti there and maybe had to try to make a lane change.
Maybe this will show us how it got started. Yeah, he got hooked by Montoya.
Yeah, Montoya just got into the back of him. And Mike, another thing about the bigger restrictor plate is the closing rate is going to be a lot higher than these guys had last year down here. And so now you're going to close up on the car in front of you a lot faster than what you have in the past. That's maybe causing a little bit of a judgment problem.
That was a hard lick.
It was, and it's right here in the tri-oval.
Kurt Busch has climbed from his car. He is okay. The Miller Lite Dodge, not so much.
Now the challenge this team will have, we talked about it in the first practice, when you go to a backup car, if you want to start the race where you draw a little bit later on the night, is you have to get that backup car out on the racetrack.
All right, so we're under caution very quickly in this second hour of practice. Let's go to the garage. Dick Berggren.
And Mike, the backup cars have got to go through a safety inspection before they're allowed to go out on the racetrack. This is Mark Martin's backup car. It is a brand new automobile. They're trying to get the templates on it, so I'll get out of the way for it. This car, however, has no engine. Mark will not make it out onto the racetrack. As for Denny Hamlin, his car has not yet arrived on the property. The crew says it is somewhere on Route 92, which is the highway in front of the Speedway, on its way in. Let's go to Chris Devoda.
Well, after that first practice, Jamie McMurray was unsure what his team was going to do, backup car or not. Yes, this is a backup car. This is the car he will race in the Bud Shootout, but the engine that is in there is not the motor they will use in the Bud Shootout. Talked to Kevin Bono-Mannion. He said this engine is not race ready, so they have a third motor getting off the truck. The team will have to prep that and make the swap tonight. So it's a long night, a very long night for the one crew. And Larry Mack, as you said, they've got to get this car out on the track in this practice session.
And that's pretty much a safety situation there. There you see the remains of that car from that big crash in that first practice session. Two of them right there.
So now, even though that's not the engine you're going to race in the shootout, would you put that car on track, make a few laps so you can hold your starting spot?
Absolutely, but the big, not so much as much the starting spot is just getting some laps on that race car to know what we've got.
But the two wrecks I've seen so far, I've thought about it here for a few minutes, it's closing rate. I think these cars have a much higher closing rate than what we've seen here in the past, what the drivers are used to. After all, you know, they haven't been on the racetrack since last year. I think there's just a little bit of a closing rate issue, and then judgment is playing into that.
And Mike, this is a 64th of an inch bigger restrictor plate than we ran here last year, which is about 12 to 14 horsepower, but it's about a 16th bigger, which is almost 50 horsepower from what we ran at Talladega in the fall.
So far today, two big crashes, the biggest coming in the first practice session. 35 minutes into the session, Denny Hamlin looks high, tries to get back in line, gets into Mark Martin, and it's on. And now just 2 minutes and 50 seconds into the second practice session, Montoya hooks Kurt Busch. Red flag out at Daytona. Speed's presentation of Bud Shootout practice from Daytona is presented by Budweiser. With full flavor and a crisp, clean finish, it's what we do. And brought to you by Hershey's Milk and Milkshakes. Try a new way to indulge in Hershey's. And by DirecTV. To get the most out of your high-def TV, you got to hook up to DirecTV. Call 1-800-DirecTV. Well, it's been Budweiser crash-out practice so far for a lot of these teams. Let's find out how that last party got started. Krista?
Down here, Mike, in the garage with Juan Pablo Montoya. Okay, the good news, your car doesn't look as bad as some of these other ones. The bad news, they are working on the front end. How bad is it?
It's pretty good. It's just a little, rub there, but it's a shame, I don't know. I pushed the two through the straight. He got inside the, I think the 34. I don't know. I think it's probably John. And John just went all the way down to the bottom. I was right on the two checked up, and that was that. But
I thought after that first practice things would be a little more calm in the second one.
I was out of the first practice because they were so out of control. I parked the car. So I didn't want to be involved in any wrecks, so I just parked the car. And I thought, we're single file, pushed it to get inside of 34, and 34 just caught it down. It doesn't matter. It's what it is.
Thanks, Juan.
Casey Kane there, the 9 car. First starting a Ford. He's the fastest, what little bit of practice we've had.
Greg Biffle, and I believe it's Jimmy Maycar
it is
talking to.
Yep. And there is Denny Hamlin's backup car coming in under cover of darkness. Saturday night, 24 cars will square off in this race that will be run in 2 segments live on Fox. 25 laps, 10-minute pit stop, 50 laps. And tonight, following this practice,
some very ill drivers will be over there drawing.
Yes, they will. The blind draw. Without making a pun out of that.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't go there.
Basically, you just draw for your starting spot.
Don't go there, Mike.
No, nope. And once again, remember that drivers involved in accidents must get on track in this practice session to start in the position they draw. Otherwise, they'll have to start out back.
But something that's been kind of interesting. I haven't seen any drivers. Juan was maybe the most upset with John Andretti, but I haven't seen any drivers pointing fingers at each other. It's almost like they say, it's just something's just happening out there.
Brian Newman getting ready to roll, and the track might be open when we come back. Next Thursday, NASCAR's back, and we're here in Daytona for a pair of races on the high banks. Be here as the field is set for the 500. The Gatorade Duel at Daytona next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern, and that's only on Speed. Here's the hit list so far in Budweiser Shootout practice. 6 cars in the pileup during the first practice session, and Kurt Busch, who ended up in the wall 3 minutes into this session. Kurt is with Dick Berggren.
How hard a hit was that?
It's just one of those that you take. Really following guys, just trying to get up this speed in the draft, and we can't do that. I don't really know what to say or what's going to happen. We just got a lot of wrecked race cars in a short practice already.
In 2007, he went to a backup car, finished the Bud Shootout in 3rd position.
You know, it's interesting that Dick says that, because we know now we for sure will have 5 backup cars. We're not quite to where we were 2 years ago in 2008. We had 8 backup cars that started the Budweiser Shootout.
Well, practice isn't over with yet either.
No, we still got about 45 minutes to go.
Yeah.
Brian Vickers at the head of this pack just missed the crash in the last practice session. He was the last car in that conga line behind Matt Kenseth, and somehow escaped damage when Denny Hamlin and Mark Martin got together.
But you know, again, I've been watching these guys. Nobody's really doing anything crazy. These accidents are just happening. That's pretty close right there, Dale Jr.
As they come up on Logano, who gives them plenty of room.
But these things are just happening. You know, somebody run in the back of somebody, and pretty convinced by now that it's got a little bit more closing rate than these guys were thinking they were going to have.
Now, we've mentioned in the last program that Kevin Harvick is ill with what's described as flu-like symptoms. Clint Boyer practiced for Harvick in the first hour. The 29 pulls out from the garage area now, and or rather Jeff Burton's car pulls out from the garage area.
Now, that's his backup car.
And we'd had word that Burton was going to practice Harvick's car. In that case, who's in the 31? We'll double check on that. Going to take a while to get all these sponsors and driver changes straight. Yes, that's Matt Kenseth driving for Crown Royal in the 17. I think the one I'm struggling with is putting Casey Kane behind the wheel of the Budweiser Ford.
Yeah.
Now, there was a Budweiser Ford back when Junior Johnson owned it, but that'll take a little getting used to. That whole Richard Petty operation, shifting to Ford for 2010.
The only Dodges in Sprint Cup is the Penske organization with his 3 cars.
I'm just not real sure what I believe the rear shock packages on these cars has made them a little bit more difficult to drive, just by watching them go through the bumps and how the cars seem to be porpoising more, which means that the car is being sucked down in the back. You can see Tony Stewart's car right there, Larry, and the 39 on out. See how far down the car is in the back?
Which more rebound will do that. And we talked about it in the first practice. You know, the viewer may be saying, well, why don't they put different shocks on it? At the restrictor plate tracks, Daytona and Talladega, NASCAR mandates the rate of the rear springs. They give you a little option to work with in the right rear, but they actually issue the rear shocks to the teams. Everyone runs the same shock package in the rear.
Boy, one thing about this practice, everybody's giving everybody a lot more room on the racetrack than we saw in the first hour.
Not as much 3 wide, what we were seeing earlier.
Let's go to the garage and Dick.
Well, Jimmy Johnson is giving everybody as much room as possible. He has pulled his car in. He is done for the night. Did a plug check just before he finished the last run out there. Let's see if we can catch a quick word with him. How was the car out there, Jimmy?
I'm real happy. And the way they're wrecking cars out there, we're happy enough to put the cover on it and then get it ready for the race. Last thing we want to do is have to go home and pull out a downforce car to bring down here. But these guys are doing a great job. The car, we weren't so good in the first practice. The second one, the car was much better.
The beard's coming back.
Yeah, it is. Chad and I had a great off season, and had some good times. Went to Las Vegas and celebrated and all of that. And then I just figured I have to find a way to irritate him, and this does it more than anything. So it's time to give him a hard time.
It's nice to see you again.
You got it.
You know, he talked about being happy with the way that car is driving. That's actually the same car that he finished second with here in July. And we know when the track is heated up in July how important getting a car to drive good. But it looks like to me it's going to be ultra important even for this Budweiser Shootout Saturday.
Yeah, I think so. And he's sitting there fourth quick on the sheet, and that tells you the car's running pretty darn good. It's got a lot of speed in it, as they say. So I would park it too, based on what I've been seeing.
And of course, he has 3 teammates in the shootout. All 4 Hendrick cars are in the shootout. So when those drivers and crew chiefs debrief, if there's anything to be learned in this last half hour, he will have the benefit of that.
You know, we watched Dale Jr. down the bottom there of your screen, off into turn 1. One of the things that made him so good here back when he was winning races and leading races was he could run his car wide open all night long. Where a lot of the guys had to lift up out of the throttle, getting in the corner, maybe getting off the corner. It's what made Junior's car always look like it had more horsepower than anybody else's. He was able to hold the throttle down all the way around the racetrack all night long. That's a big advantage if you can get that to work for you. And I know people home say, yeah, that makes sense, but it's hard to do once the tires heat up and the track gets a little rubber on it.
And that's one thing the drivers did applaud this little bit bigger. We say bigger restrictor plate. The holes are bigger in the restrictor plate. Is that you can roll out and you'll have more throttle response. Yeah, it has more power, but a lot more throttle response when you lift out and go back to the throttle.
Yeah, in theory, you should not have to bump into people. You should be able to back off and catch right back up.
Now that's interesting right there, Darrell. Kyle Busch cut to the bottom to make the move on Jeff Burton, the 31. He had done that earlier in the first hour and been able to move by at will, but this time to get past Burton, he needed help from Brian Vickers to do it. Couldn't just jump down there and make the pass on his own.
Looks like he's got that little 18 car driving pretty good right now. He can go from the top to the bottom and back to the top.
And he will do that a lot.
By himself.
All by himself.
Welcome back to Daytona. Second hour of Bud Shootout practice. 5 backup cars already in use. Probably a 6th for Kurt Busch going to be rolled out. And again, we've checked with NASCAR. If you go to a backup car and get on track in this practice session with it, you can start in the spot that you draw later this evening. Should you change engines, as we know Jamie McMurray in the #1 car will have to do, that does not affect your starting position. Now, last year apparently it did, because Jeff Burton had to go to the back last year for an engine change. Joey Logano had to start out back because he missed the drivers' meeting.
But Jeff Burton did that with his primary car. It was not a backup car. NASCAR feels like you serve the penalty enough by going to a backup car.
Good point.
And I said that is Burton's backup car. It's actually that's his car. I was thinking about the 29.
Should you have to change engines in your primary car because of an engine problem, that's just like any other race of the year. You'd have to go to the back of the field.
Kyle Busch around the outside of Montoya. He's going to get a little help from Dale Jr.
Kyle Busch got up there and has been leading his pack pretty much the whole time he's been out there. He and Junior have been working pretty well together here. First time that I've seen Montoya work his way up toward the front.
You know, Darrell, it's awfully early in our season, but I just think we're going to see Kyle Busch back to the form that he was in 2008. I think there's a lot of distractions that's gone. He just re-signed a multi-year contract with Joe Gibbs Racing. He won that Nationwide Series championship. He's not going to try to race all over the country on a cup weekend. He's going to only run companion events. I think he's going to be back in winning form, possibly championship form again this year.
Yeah, and I don't know why, Larry, but it's just like Tony Stewart. When Tony Stewart became an owner, part owner in the team he drives for, seemed to calm him down some too. I've seen that through the years, and you know, with Kyle now having a truck team, kind of an ownership role, it changes your perspective quite a bit of how you approach things.
I think the biggest thing with Kyle Busch is winning that nationwide championship. You know, it's kind of nice to sit at that head table, and he knows that trying to win every week doesn't do it.
Yeah.
Trying to maximize what you can do with the car every week and get the best finish every week.
Yeah, it
wins championships.
Just think about the 4th of July race here. He could have probably finished second, no worse than third, and he would have been in the chase.
Right.
But he chose to try to win the race instead of finish the race, and it cost him dearly.
Risk versus reward.
Yeah, big picture. You know, it's that big picture thing. You don't see it until it's too late.
Well, that's because you're standing in the middle of it.
The blind obvious.
Yeah, it's hard to see it from there.
Now, we saw right there riding with Dale Earnhardt Jr. At the end of the front stretch how the bump draft works right there, because it definitely shot that 18 car down off into turn 1 when he gave him that shot right before they got to turn 1.
If you play it right, it helps both of you. Now, if you give that 18 car a real hard shot and shoot him way ahead of you, now all of a sudden you got to hurry up and try to catch back up. I believe this bigger restrictor plate will allow that to happen quicker than it's happened in the past.
The car tailing that group 34, that's John Andretti. And he's going to run here at Daytona, run the Indy 500, just run a very select schedule of races, not run the series full time this year.
You know, sorry, Mike.
Go ahead.
I was just watching Burton there. You know, he was the fastest car in our first practice session, and that car is fast. I saw him drive by a bunch of guys here to get out front here, and look at him. He's pretty much holding his own all by himself without any help.
And you know, we talk about new driver crew chief combinations. It's not necessarily new, but I'm going to tell you, when you think back to the end of 2009 when Todd Berrier went over there with Jeff Burton, they finished second in the last 2 races of the year. 4 top 10 finishes, and think about Todd Berrier. He did win this race a year ago as Kevin Harvick's crew chief.
Got a fast piece right now, I can tell you that.
Speed's coverage of Bud Shootout practice from Daytona is brought to you by Alien versus Predator, 2010's biggest multi-species multiplayer game.
We got some Predators in Nashville. The Predators are doing pretty good this year, our hockey team.
Riding with Carl Edwards, who has the 9th fastest lap of this session.
Run a lot of laps. He's only run 3 laps total.
Let's check with Dick.
And I'm in Tony Stewart's area. See that right there in the top of that radiator? That's the radiator that was in Stewart's car. He picked up a piece of debris and dumped all the water. So they're putting a new radiator in. As long as they were doing that, they decided also to change the rear gear. It is very busy in the 14 garage area right now.
All right, Dick, not to put you on the spot, but how much does that piece of debris cost? What's a radiator worth these days?
Hundreds of dollars for sure. You can't buy yourself one of those nice cars you see at Barrett Jackson with it.
No.
But you're certainly spending hundreds, possibly even thousands, Mike.
Probably 1,500, 2,000.
You know what I'm seeing this group doing? You know, we still have a gear rule, but you still have a choice between a higher or lower ratio. And, you know, possibly they're trying to evaluate, maybe will the car suck up better with a higher gear. But I think if you're going to be out of the throttle, which you probably will be, that lower gear is the way to go.
Yeah, if you were all by yourself and you could just hold the car wide open all the time, no traffic, then go as high as you can go. But where you got to be in and out of traffic, moving around, lifting out of the throttle, that gear, that lower gear is your passing gear. What are they saying, Dick?
Got the price on that radiator from Darian Grubb, who is the crew chief for. All right, didn't come from him, came from somebody else, but found out that radiator is worth about $7,000 to $8,000. They do a lot of work to the radiator once it gets back to them from C&R, who manufactures it.
Wow, there's Darian.
Well, it goes back to what Darrell was talking about earlier. You know, you want to run as much tape on the nose of the car as you possibly can, because reducing the airflow helps the car straightaway speed with drag, helps the front downforce. Well, there's a lot of things that goes on in that radiator that allows you to run more tape on the nose of the car.
Oh yeah, they play with the fin angles. They go to they put durometer. What do they call those? Not durometers. Anemometers in the grill work of the race car in the wind tunnel, and play with the fins and the angles of the fins. And, of course, that radiator now, it has the oil cooler probably in it as well. It's a heat exchanger built into it. So that's what makes it so expensive.
Ryan Newman, Greg Biffle out drafting together. Biffle in a backup car. He's only had 4 laps on this car since they rolled it out of the truck.
Looks better than the other one he had, I can tell you that. Remember, the other one he had was sideways all the time.
Stuart Haas put both cars into the chase for the Sprint Cup last year. There's how they ended up.
You know the amazing thing about both those teams, I was just reading this morning. In the 36 points event, they only each had 1 DNF, and it was in the same wreck with just a few laps to go at Talladega. But those 2 teams completed all but 24 laps of competition in 2009. That's your whole race team prides yourself in that.
Sure. Let's go down to Richard Childress Racing and investigate the musical chairs going on there with Krista.
Yes, musical chairs indeed. Jeff Burton just pulling in the 31. Now this car is done for the night, but Jeff Burton's job is not done. Jeff is going to swap over and drive Kevin Harvick's car, take a couple practice laps. Remember, this is a backup car, the 29. You see Jeff coming across the garage. It's just a couple of garage stalls away, the 31 to the 29. This car has to get out on track. So Jeff is going to come over. Remember, Kevin is at home sick with the flu, so Jeff is going to come over and practice the 29. Meanwhile, what did he say about the 31? He said if it turned just a little bit better, I'd be happy, but it's really good. And if I heard him correctly, the last thing he said before he came in was, quote, "This girl's going to win the race."
But I like
believe him.
But I like what they're doing. Yeah, we witnessed that 31 car is driving good, and it, you know, Clint drove this car in the first practice, and now this is a backup car. So Jeff will have something to gauge off of because he knows how his car is driving.
Did I not tell you when he went out there a while ago, Jeff Burton was in a backup car?
He is now.
He is now.
You're a fortune teller.
Psychic. I'm psychic.
Tonight, the most exciting awards show on television, the Speed Performance Awards. See if Jimmy Johnson will take home his 4th consecutive Performer of the Year award. Don't miss the Speed Performance Awards tonight, 10:30 Eastern, only on Speed.
You know, in the history of that, this may be the first year that Jeff Hammond has not been up and nominated for one of the Blunder of the Year awards, of jumping off of a stage, getting hit in the head with a baseball, jumping out of a perfectly good airplane without a parachute. I don't think he's nominated this year.
He didn't set anything on fire down there around his cutaway car.
And your point would be?
Just a little bit surprised.
Yeah.
It's just not, you know, some years you just have an off year, you know. Things don't work out for you.
All right, Mark Martin is one of 4 drivers who have not practiced in this session. You saw them work on his car. Denny Hamlin, they rolled out a backup car. It's going through the inspection process. This number 29 has not been on track, nor has the 75 of Derek Cope, which has not made a lap today.
Based on what I saw looking in that garage area of the 5, I don't see a lot of urgency there. The engine's not in the car. I don't think this 5 car will be out there for practice. You'll see him start the Budweiser Shootout at the back of the field.
Yeah, if that one goes on track, Fred Flintstone's going to have to drive it. Bergie?
Well, Jeff Gordon is on his way back out to the racetrack, Mike. He had brought the car in. They'd done a little bit of work to it, not very much, because the last time he was in the garage, the work they performed really got the job done. He said he's going through the bumps much better than before. They just sort of been hanging around here waiting to see a bunch of cars accumulate. He wants to go out and race with some other people, see what the car feels like in the draft. No point, after all, in going out all by yourself or with only 1 or even 2 other cars on the track. But some cars building up out there. I think we're going to see some folks on the track soon.
And really, Doc, you can't tell anything about your car driving around here by yourself. You don't know, the gear would be wrong, the setup would be wrong. That's why you got to mix it up, because that's the way the race is going to be run Saturday night. So you got to get out there in those kind of conditions.
At the front of this pack, the 1989 shootout winner, Ken Schrader. For much of his career, Ken was aligned with Hendrick Motorsports and became friends over there with Jay Fry, who now runs the Red Bull Racing organization in NASCAR, and made a deal with Jay to drive this number 82 car in the shootout.
Yeah, he actually won it back-to-back years, Mike, 89 and 90, 2 years in a row.
Interesting article in the Hartford Courant by Sean Kershane, as you see Schrader's on the all-time appearance list for the Bud Shootout. He cited Bo Jackson, the baseball player, having a breakout season in 1989. But would you want him to play in the All-Star game this year? And he questioned the validity of Ken Schrader racing in the Budweiser Shootout more than 20 years after what was his heyday. And I think in writing that story, Kershane forgets that Schrader's been an active racer all this time, continues to compete, not always in Sprint Cup, but in other forms of racing. He's never hung up his helmet. He's still a racer, and you know what? This sport ought to honor those who have won and still want to compete.
Yeah, Kenny is very capable. I mean, he could sit there and, matter of fact, a couple of years ago, he sat there and won the first 25 laps of the Bud Shootout. So he's a very capable driver. This is absolute fluke, and that's a fast race car.
I think it's good that he can compete in it. Sounds like to me that guy didn't have a whole lot to write about.
You know, you got to sell papers. Schrader is second on the speed chart right now. Casey Kane at the top, Matt Kenseth third, Jimmy Johnson and Tony Stewart are the fast five at the moment.
Riding with Joey Logano in the 20 car, saw Bobby Labonte, who's in this race, in that 71 car right behind him.
Schrader car looks good, I'm telling you. It's handling good. Look at that on that yellow line. Old man's getting it.
Welcome back to Daytona. Casey Kane, Ken Schrader, Matt Kenseth on top of the speed chart. All of those laps set very early in this session. In fact, of all the 21 drivers who have taken laps in this session, Dale Jr. and Kyle Busch are the only ones to improve on their first couple of laps practice time.
Wonder how many times Kenny Schrader and Tony Stewart, who is running right behind Kenny there, wonder how many times they've been on a dirt track together. I'll bet a bunch. In a sprint car, a midget, a IMSA modified, some kind of a
dirt late model, you name it.
Yeah, sure. I bet they've raced each other a lot on dirt.
No telling how many different tracks they've raced each other at on dirt.
3 cars have not practiced. We saw the 5 without an engine in it. We are told that Denny Hamlin will not practice the backup car. They will start in the back Saturday night. And Derek Cope has not yet made a lap, which means he will start in the back.
29 just went by there with Burton at the wheel. The last backup driver didn't fare so well in that car.
No, Clint Boyer.
Engine being put in Mark Martin's 5 car. So we know this car will not practice and will start at the back of the field on Saturday night. This is final practice.
These restrictor plate engines they're like gold. They're like precious. You only have a few of them. You don't have a whole garage full of restrictor plate engines. So you take care of them, you use them as much as you can, and then you save your best piece for the 500.
Krista?
Just want to let you guys know what Jeff Burton is saying about the 29. Remember, he's not in his car. He's driving Kevin Harvick's car right now. He said it drives pretty decent, turns pretty well. What he needs is some traffic, though. He's not sure exactly how it handles in traffic, so he's asking the spotter to just give him a little heads up if he can get around a few other cars. That's really what he wants to know. But he said right now it's pretty good.
But that backs up what Darrell said a while ago. You can't learn anything at all when you're running that configuration right there. You've got to get out there with at least 5, 6, 7 other cars to find out how the car's going to drive in traffic.
And the problem is the 5 cars running together on the racetrack are well out ahead of him. So maybe he'll pull the pits, or maybe he'll just wait on him.
I think he'll catch him here on the back. If he doesn't, he better get going, though, because they're going to go by him. You see him now. He's pulling up to the outside wall there, trying to get up in that outside groove. Now he's back down there where this group of cars, he's going to try to latch onto them when they come by.
Stewart, Earnhardt, Waltrip, and Schrader with Greg Biffle and Ryan Newman. Krista?
Well, one of those drivers who had 2 practice sessions in 2 different cars, Jamie McMurray. So how is the backup compared to that first car?
It actually drives a little bit better. So you certainly don't ever want to tear anything up. But typically when you come here, they take your 500 car to be your best car, and then your 500 backup's your second best, and the shootout would be I guess the worst of the group. So the car drives a little bit better, and they're going to put a brand new engine in it tonight. That's actually not a race engine that was in there. So the motor's maybe just a little bit off, but drivability-wise, the car was a little bit better. So hopefully that's a good sign. We're done. We have to go through templates. They're going to get the motor out and get everything ready.
Well, so after that first practice, you were kind of glass half empty. Now, I mean, after the second one, glass half full, right?
Well, the race is going to be exciting. Certainly, if you want to watch something on Saturday night that's going to be thrilling, this is going to be a very wild event. The cars suck up so much better than what we've ever had with the bigger plate, and I guess with the different wicker. It's incredible the closing rate that you have. So it's going to be very exciting for the fans.
All right, that's a perfect promotion for our race, the Bud Shootout Saturday night.
Absolutely. The idea behind the bigger plate, enabled by the aerodynamic changes, was to give the drivers a bit of that pull out to pass power and the ability to suck up to the cars ahead.
Yeah. It was funny hearing him say this car drives a little better than the primary car, because I go back last year, Jamie had an awesome run in the Budweiser Shootout. That car drove so good for him. He crashed his 500 car, had to go to the shootout car, and he talked about how much better that shootout car drove than his 500 car, again driving for Roush Fenway last year.
Well, usually thing in the All-Star race at Charlotte and in the Bud Shootout here at Daytona, you don't run your best car in that race.
You run the one you don't need to bring home in one piece.
Just bring me back the steering wheel.
Several
or the trophy.
Several are in that category.
Speed's presentation of Bud Shootout practice from Daytona is presented by Budweiser, with full flavor and a crisp, clean finish. It's what we do. Brought to you in part by Marathon, fueling the American spirit. And by Hershey's Milk and Milkshakes. Try a new way to indulge in Hershey's.
You know, just watching the pace of this practice, it's been a little slower than that first practice. Reason being, we've not had that big pack out there where cars were lined up catching another pack. It's about a couple of miles an hour slower, about 3 or 4 tenths on the stopwatch than that first practice session.
And Larry, don't you think normally you don't change? The first practice you got new tires on, and the car drives a little bit better on the newer tires. You probably stay on the same set of tires through these practice sessions, and that may slow you down a little bit too.
Yeah, when you've got new tires on there, that's going to give the car grip. You're full of fuel. That gets the back of the car down out of the air a little bit. The more fuel you burn off, it also raises the back of the car. That slows it down.
Yeah. Plus, they make them drive better. And when they drive better, they don't go as fast.
You want it to feel better? We'll slow you down a little more.
That's right.
Kyle Busch backs out for another run.
That we're getting close to what will probably be these guys' last run. We've got about 7 or 8 minutes left in this final practice session.
Now, he was fast in the first hour, but he's only 15th quickest in this second hour of practice.
Well, and we say it year in and year out. You know, looking at a practice sheet of drafting practice at Daytona or Talladega, it's kind of more just a feel-good deal if you happen to be at the top. It's all in how you line up and what configuration you're in. That's going to be how fast you run.
And some of these guys are pretty smart about that. They'll kind of lay way back on a group of cars and get a run on them and get a fast lap and jump right to the top of the chart. Even though they may not be that good, they just get themselves in a position to get a fast lap.
See who's been the most successful at logging laps. Dale Jr. with 32, Michael Waltrip 27, Ryan Newman and Jeff Gordon 25 each, and Joey Logano.
Well, and it kind of supports what we were just talking about. You know, the safest place for your race car is in the garage area. I think we've well documented that. But you've got to run some laps knowing that this race will be 25 laps, and then that 10-minute break, they'll change tires, and you've got to run 50 laps. So you know you've got to know what that car is going to do well into a run.
Yeah, that 25 laps, that's about where your car really starts to go off, if it's going to go off. It's in the 50-lapper, man, that you got to really work on it.
And I'd say with a field of only 24 cars, no matter what, when that yellow flag waves, give me 4 tires.
Okay, amen.
Krista?
Mike, one of those cars that went out there for a late run, Kyle Busch in the 18. When he was out there before, he had said his car was really tight, real tight up off the turn. So they came in and made some handling changes, worked on the front bar a little bit. They were worried that they wouldn't have time to get back out there with the changes, but they are back out on the track now.
It takes 2 men and a boy to change the sway bar on one of these things.
In a forklift.
About the size of your leg.
You know, looking at Tony Stewart in that 14 car, he has had so much success in this Budweiser Shootout. He has 10 starts. He's got 3 wins. He's only finished outside the top 7 one time in those 10 races of the shootout.
He is 5th on the speed chart with a 47.05, and he's run 21 laps.
Tony's just like Dale used to be. It's a race, and I want to win it. And it doesn't matter. You can say, well, it's just the Bud Shootout, or it's just this for an all-star race. But when some guys, when they throw that green flag, I don't care what kind of race it is, they're going to win it.
And you're talking about Dale Earnhardt Sr., who won it 5 times.
Yeah. This was Dale's cup of tea right here. Hard racing for a short period of time, man.
Stewart has more shootout wins than anybody in this field with 3. And he's also won 2 Gatorade Dual races.
A lot like Dale Earnhardt Sr. up until 1998. He's won everything you can win here, including an IROC road course race. He just has never sealed the deal in the Daytona 500.
And I think the nationwide race.
He's won it 4 times.
Yeah, so everything but.
The dual races, he's won the July race. There's nothing he hadn't won in, with the exception of the Daytona 500. Jeff Burton talking to Gil Martin about the 29 car. And I think Mike mentioned it a couple of times, Kevin Harvick not here because he's fighting about with the flu.
Krista.
Jeff Burton out of his 2nd car in this practice session. So I know you had talked the 31 really good. So do you want to start there, or do we talk about the 29?
I told Gil that if I was a crew chief, I couldn't put up with 1 driver in a weekend, much less 3. So I feel pretty bad for him. That car drives good. It just doesn't have the right engine in it. So they're going to put the right engine in it, and I think they'll be pretty good. The Cat Chevrolet is wicked fast. I'm really happy with it. Didn't drive very well the first practice, and they did something to it. I don't know what they did to it, but it drove a lot better, and it had a lot of speed. We talked about running some more and trying to make it better, but to be honest, like right now, there's only 5 or 6 cars out there, and I think you fool yourself sometimes when you get in small packs. Half the field's wrecked and in the garage, and Saturday night it's going to be completely different. So I'm real comfortable where we're starting. I think we're going to probably have to free up a little bit to be as good as we need to be. But again, it's just real easy to get fooled with only 5 cars on the track. It won't be 5 cars. It might only be 5 cars across the start-finish line, but for the majority of the race, it's going to be more than 5 cars Saturday night.
Thanks, Jeff.
Practice rolls on. No change in the top times.
Always said the beach. We're going to the beach.
Okay.
Did
you know
not,
what?
Are you not that old?
I'm afraid I am.
We're looking at Dale Earnhardt Jr. here, and Darrell, well, you watched him drop down coming through the tri-oval going down into turn 1. And I'm almost wondering, and I'm sure Dick O'Krista will find this out, he's showing 40 laps in this practice. I wonder if they ran this thing till basically it ran out of gas.
Or he's got a flat. There's some issue with the car. I'm not sure what. Sounds like is that rocks flying or is that rubber flying?
Well, he's on the apron, and I think it's just the rocks that the hot tires are picking up. But he's running an awful lot of laps in this practice, 40-something laps. So we'll find out exactly what they're doing here. I'd say no matter what, they're pretty much done. Dick, I think you maybe have the answer.
Yep, out of gas. In fact, the crew is walking down to the front of pit road to get him and push him in. Jeff Gordon also out of gas, but he did it deliberately. He did a plug check.
And just in time, because here's the red and black flags to end the session.
But that second part of that race is 50 laps. That tells me Lance McGrew and Dale Earnhardt Jr., they've put it in the worst case scenario, way low on fuel and a lot of laps on the tires. And just in time.
So Casey Kane wins practice round 2. Jeff Burton was at the top of the chart for round 1. Casey wins final practice in his Ford. Kenny Schrader right up there. Matt Kenseth, Jimmy Johnson, Tony Stewart are the Fast Five.
One thing real quickly about Dale Jr., the coast down on that car must be pretty darn good because he ran out of gas right here at the start-finish line. And that's something we used to test.
We know they'll go over 2.5 miles coasting.
Right. Coasting.
All right, Dave Despain will be right here to make sense of all of this for you. And we'll see you at Daytona 500 pre-qualifying practice tomorrow.